This conference will now
Good
be
morning
recorded.
and welcome here. This is a sole purpose informational meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to inform the public that the town of Ocean Ridge will be applying for a federal Florida Department of Environmental Protection Recreational Trails grant program. The town will be providing a 20% match to the state's 80% contribution up to a combined total of $450,000. The purpose of this meeting is informational only. We have no design, we have no locations. None of the assets or the amenities have been defined, no design, no drawings. Per the requirements of this grant, we have to seek public input from the community as to whether they support us applying for this grant. The grant pays for all of the meetings, design, location selection, everything like that, and would be after we got the grant. The purpose of applying for the grant is so that we can receive funds to complete the amenities the town is required to complete as part of the reimbursement for the Priest property and the Eater properties that the town recently purchased. We are getting $1 million and change back as a reimbursement for having purchased the Priest property for preservation and conservation. And we are receiving up to $200,000 on what we paid for the Eater property back from the state. But because those are grants, there are requirements for things like educational signage that says that this was done in conjunction with state funds, as well as some type of amenities, whether our plan is to do what's called a blue trail, which is a kayak paddling trail to meet the recreational requirements. That allows us to not have to put any boardwalks or docks, things like that, into the mangroves that would need to be remediated. It also allows us to partner with the county on the trail because they have multiple adjacent mangrove properties as well. This isn't the meeting where we're asking for your input yet because we're not at that point. If we get the grant, we will then hold public meetings for input on what you want to see in terms of amenities and where they would be. So normally this is like a 5 or 10 minute meeting. We tell you we're applying for this grant, and unless we get significant backlash from the community saying, no, we don't want you to apply for funding so that we don't have to pay for it all, then we will move forward with the application. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I wouldn't push back against it. I would, of course, be very supportive of it in my mind. There's a lot of questions. You're saying that if you get awarded the grant, there's no cash attached to the award of the grant until the project is completed, or
right.
Certain steps have to be made before you actually get money.
Correct. It will be a reimbursement grant.
But you wouldn't be able to use the grant money to pay for this other property.
No, we already have
right.
a grant that paid for those.
Right.
We got.
So you can't piggyback onto that.
Well, we are essentially we can't get land we can't get more funds for the purchase of that land. No, we've already got the maximum for a purchase. We've already received the maximum that we can get reimbursed for purchasing.
Yeah.
But what this grant allows us to do is to be reimbursed for putting in the required amenities that those other two grants have as a requirement.
So they do have requirements for amenities.
They have a requirement for signage.
Yeah.
And educational signage, and then They like to have trails, which is why we're going to do a blue water, which basically is on the intercoastal and up and down that area, and showing where people can feasibly go into the mangroves using their kayak or paddle boat, but only areas that are already naturally doing that.
So would they post signs in the waterway saying this is a blue trail?
No, there ends up being maps. The state actually has a map system of all of the what they call blue water trails throughout the state. There's currently blue water trails to the north and to the south of this area. So it would be connected and it would become basically information on state trail maps.
So as far as you know now, I know this is just conjecture, you wouldn't be required to have parking or public launch facilities. You would have to partner with someone else to do that.
We have to be able to provide public access to the properties that we have the other grants for. It doesn't specifically have to be on those properties, the public access. So what we may do is collaborate with the county and put a public access there, or at the nature walk area where the county has the boardwalk. We may be able to use that already existing area as our public access. To my knowledge, it does not require parking.
Someone would take a kayak down the wooden pathway to the access?
If they want to, yes.
They won't want to. It's too far, and there's no parking.
Well, there's already a sign that says no bikes, but
It's quite obvious that this is a very early stage.
Yes.
So I think this has got to all be worked out. I
Right.
think, though, that the town has to realize that in order, I'm thinking all 6 of us here are supporting this.
Yes.
But you have to realize that there has to be a way that I can bring my kayak from Ocean Walk up here and drop it in somewhere and use the trail.
Right.
And that means that I need to have a place where I can put my car where the kayak is on top, on the rack. So I think as you go through the whole process.
And those are all things that we will work out as
Right.
part of the design, which is reimbursable if we get the grant.
We understand. And so just to be sure, I think we all understand this now. This is almost required, or something is going to be required by the fact that the town, purchased the 2 properties
Correct.
that are requiring us to do something along this way.
Right.
And this is a lot cheaper than building boardwalks through there.
Absolutely.
And less invasive.
It's less invasive, it's less expensive, it is more in line with preservation and conservation.
Which is why we bought the properties.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's your estimation of our chances of getting the grant?
Very high.
Oh, good.
And this is not federal money.
No, this is state
So-
DEP money.
Better.
So we're not waiting.
Well, the website says it's money that they draw from the federal government for this purpose. I'm just telling you what it says.
Okay.
It actually all comes out of your pocket.
Right.
in my opinion,
Right.
Eventually.
Yes.
Oh, you know, these great
Tax
people
money.
in Washington could chop off things real quick.
They could.
Yeah.
You know, which is why we are working diligently to make sure we've got everything filled out so that we get our reimbursements in for priest and eater
Yeah.
before anything else happens. So, yeah.
So Lynn, is this basically the cheapest way to use this property so that you keep the grant? Because what I'm thinking
Yes.
is, since you have to spend the money forward, right? You have to spend the 450 grand before you get the 90. If you get down the road and you spend 400 grand and say, this thing ain't gonna work, nobody's gonna show up because there's no parking, you know, that kind of thing. What happens then? We lose the 400, or we gotta do it anyway to keep the grant money from the other stuff? From buying.
There has to be certain things. There has to be public access and education as part of the Conservation Trust and the FERDAP grants that we got for those 2 properties. Those are requirements. We're going to have to do something anyway. What this grant does is it allows us to pay for the things that are required by the other 2. So it's not all coming out of the town's pocket.
So, but ultimately, if it fails, you'd have to pay for that because you've already got a contract to purchase.
Ultimately, if we do not fulfill within a specified time frame putting these amenities in, we would have to reimburse the state back the grant funds that we got for the purchases.
Yeah.
Which is more than the 400.
Which is more than the 400.
Yes, which is 1.25 million and change. So
Either way, we're gonna save money, hopefully
our
more.
20% of
We can't
four
get
hundred
you
and
to buy
fifty
this property
thousand.
over here.
We made him an offer last year. He said he was not interested in what we offered him. In part because he could not write off any write down as a tax deduction
Yeah,
until he had owned the property for 12
But
months.
before you came, it was for sale for $1 million.
I understand, but
Now he wants 3 for it, right?
actually I think he wanted like 4 for it. But what I am hoping is that we hit the 12-month mark from when he purchased it, and it still really isn't moving forward. At that time, we could potentially reach out again, make the same offer for the same amount, and he would be, if the appraiser came in at his value, he could deduct the difference.
And you'd be able to use that for a lot of purposes.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't put a building on it, but you could use it for a lot of other purposes.
I would like to see it, if we did get it, I would like to see us put some additional overflow parking for here.
Yeah.
I would like to see some typical exercise equipment like you normally see along walking paths.
Yeah.
To provide that as a resource to the community. And also some sort of amenities that match with the other.
Kayak launching.
That could be, yeah.
You know, I was telling you folks about my aunt's property on the St. Johns River,
Mhm.
10 acres. They applied for the grant agency was a little differently. In those days, the government had been reorganized, but it was DEP. And it had a pathway, you know, where cars could go down to the river. But they had a sign that looked like a billboard. I mean, it was bigger than that sign, and it had to be posted at the entrance.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the requirement is now.
The requirement now is signage. It's in past periods, we've usually done it in like a 12 or an 18 by 24 at the most.
Yeah.
Just has to say, you know, that this project was funded in part by, you know, state of Florida, et cetera, et
The
cetera.
whole thing on it.
Lord knows Ocean Ridge knows all about signage. And not having signs and then having signs that we're not supposed to have. Old Ocean Boulevard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great.
Up
Yes.
to Inlet,
Mhm.
that's a county park.
And look, or, yeah,
Okay, at the back side of it, there is a rack there with paddle boards on it that you can rent.
Right.
Could that be the access?
that's what we have to explore.
Okay,
Because there is also directly across from all of these mangrove properties, the Boynton Marina.
right, where you can rent kayaks.
That we could direct your kayak and paddleboard launch for our trail could potentially, if the state would let us, be the already existing marina area in Boynton Beach, which is directly across from it.
You'd have to fight 2 Georges parking.
No, because
In the park down there.
it's actually a little bit further
Oh, I know
down.
what you're talking about.
Yeah.
North?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
and they've got
So they'd
stuff.
have to come all the way across the intercoastal in a kayak.
Yeah,
I hope they don't get run over.
but,
People do it all the time.
yep.
Yeah.
Our son-in-law paddleboards from the inlet to our neighborhood.
Yeah.
On a paddleboard through the mangroves. And he's been doing that for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that
Big
do
husky guy.
paddleboard and kayak on the intercoastal. So
Are those lands already under conservation easement?
the
Priest?
Priest property is, because we've already finished the rezoning. The Eater property, not yet. We just closed on it and we have to do a zoning change and a comprehensive plan change for that. So we'll be doing that over the next few months.
Because that used to be under conservation.
Part of one of the pieces is already under a conservation easement. We are going to rezone them completely into preservation and conservation.
So that'll be in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's a little stronger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Glad I could answer your questions.
Thanks.
Yeah, move forward.
Thank you. Glad to know we're getting support.
We'll figure out something. Be sure you take everybody's name down.
Yeah, if you guys could actually, he's right, I do need to be able to document that we had people here. So if you want to just put your names, maybe an email address,
Sure you can
or,
find it separate now, Lucy.
Lucy, just put you, we don't want to tell them Terry was here.
Terry Brown.
They'll know that I was here, right?
Put a little Kilroy for Terry, I was here.
Right, I mean, you already have the address for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put it in, so everybody knows it.
Do you have the number for the county department that's in charge of that? I'll give them a call.